You put on a nickel-plated chain, new brake levers, and handles. Nice. Well, that should be a nice upgrade for you. And so what this washer does is it just helps to ensure that there's no damage to the crank arm from these steel threads. Again, you always want to make sure that stuff will thread in easily by hand in order to keep it from getting cross-threaded. At least a few turns. Then we'll tighten it up with our pedal wrench. There we go. And put this away until the next bike. I am trying to be tidy about all this. You're looking for colored brake cables or brake cable housing, because colored brake cables, yeah, the cable itself, I actually do have some that are yellow. They're Teflon coated and they're yellow. Well, at least they're yellow until the Teflon wears off, which is almost instantly. And I actually don't recommend those Teflon coated cables. They feel good on the showroom floor, but long term, you're better off just buying a higher quality drawn and polished cable. But yeah, the housings, that's a nice place to kind of personalize your bike. We're just going for black here because it's all about utility, and you know, that's probably the most common color for the cable housing that you see here, which is what he's talking about. And I buy that in bulk. And Lucindy, hey, thank you for that follow. Welcome. So speaking of cables, we are going to have to apply a derailleur on here. I could pull that out. And it looks like we were just about there last time. So let's go ahead and get that applied. But before we do that, I want to apply one more tool, which now that we have a wheel mounted back here, you kind of want green. I think I've seen them. I think I've seen green. I've definitely seen neon green. But before I attach the derailleur here, what I want to do is check my derailleur hanger. That's the part of the frame that hangs down that the derailleur mounts to. And you do need a specialty tool for this. And I just want to make sure that it's not bent. Especially since we're upgrading the drivetrain here. We're going from, I believe it was a 10-speed drivetrain to a 12-speed, which means that the gaps in between gears are even less. And it is more sensitive to this being out of alignment. And all I can say is it was just barely out of alignment, but I'm glad I checked. And truth of the matter is, I always check. Just before I do any sort of drivetrain adjustment, always check the hanger first if you have the capability of doing so. And you will regret your mechanical You will regret your mechanical attempts much less. Okay, so now that we have the rear derailleur hanger aligned, we can install the rear derailleur. And there's a tab on the hanger back here, and you just want to make sure that you get your derailleur oriented correctly. The SRAM derailleurs actually have a lockout function that is very handy for working on the derailleur. And again, you just want to make sure that it's threading in easily. Doesn't take a whole lot of effort. SRAM does add Teflon tape to their derailleur. Which gives a little bit of resistance, but there's a brand called Jaguar. That's the one that I use, Link Hunter. Yeah, all of my cables and housing are Jaguar. Bit dusty, but yeah, there's my bulk cables. And what I recommend about these, you want to use slick stainless. So you can go into a bike shop and usually buy one of these for a couple of dollars. Just ask for a slick stainless cable. That way it won't rust out on you. Because the cost difference between that and one that is not stainless is usually just less than $1. And yeah, it's not worth saving that less than $1 to have your cables rust out. Okay. So just remembering my directions here, you actually do some adjustment before the chain even goes on here, or you can. We'll adjust it to right there. Be in just a little bit. And then we can size the chain. Yeah, you know, if you have a Shimano drivetrain, Shimano recommends that you use a, well, Shimano actually recommends that you use their brand. Actually, I forgot I can just peel this off of here. But it doesn't always want to peel, does it? I guess that's why I was cutting it. Get that opened up there. And you know, you can do that. As a matter of fact, Shimano and some other brands offer a whole cable set. And here's the thing about cable housing is it's pretty much all the same age. When you build up the bike, it has all brand new cable housing on it. When you start having problems that are related to cable housing, it's not a bad idea to just replace them all at the same time. So you can buy a kit that includes everything that you need. You may still need a cable cutter to cut them to the proper length for your bicycle, but it includes the ferrules, crimp for the end, pretty much everything to just replace all your cables. Okay, we're going to have to break out the chain breaker here. Also called a chain pin press. Mine happens to also be another Abbey tool. I'm just showing off a whole bunch here today. My expensive tools. Matter of fact, this one's really kind of overkill for breaking a chain, but that's one reason why they call it the Decade. It is literally designed to last for decades of heavy use. If you're just doing light use, pretty much any kind of chain breaker is still going to do the job. Okay. So what you want to do is wrap your chain around the two biggest gears, your chain ring and your cog. You can use a little tool here. And I make these myself out of a spoke, where you can just hook a section of the chain hook another section of the chain, and it'll hold it for you. So what they're recommending is for full suspension bikes, hardtails, 2 full links. And so I think that's what I'm going to give this. That's the shortest that I could connect it. And I'm just going to give it 2 links from there. I need to break the chain right here. Back off the pin and the chain press. Get it lined up. And you should hear a slight pop, or maybe feel a slight pop when you remove that piece of chain. And that is the peening on the outside of the chain coming off. Little section of chain there. And Gun Girl, hey, how are you doing? I just realized how much crap accumulates in between front chain rings. Yeah, depending on your lube. Gun Girl, how are you doing? Thanks for stopping by and checking out my stream for what it is. Just sizing a chain for one of the team bikes. Lube? Yes. Yes, we use lube. Lube makes it better. That's actually quite a bit of bicycle mechanics, is just cleaning the old lube off and putting new lube on. Okay. We have our half link here. I use dry lube, and that's what she said. She might have been letting you know something there, Matches. Okay, so from here I need to pass the chain through the derailleur. There's a tab in the middle of it, so make sure you get it on the right side of that tab. Okay, pass it all the way through. And in this case, this little lock really comes in handy. We take the 2 halves. You want to make sure that they're oriented the correct way on an Eagle chain. This is a SRAM Eagle NX drivetrain. There's an arrow, which is the direction of rotation. And slip the 2 halves together. They can be a little fiddly, but once you get it, you'll probably know it. And then I'll release the rear derailleur, and we'll backpedal the chain until it gets to the top. And it may jump there on you, but once it gets on the top, if you grab the wheel and just push forward, you should hear that link just snap into place. If it's dry, is it really lube? True. Okay, and it looks like we have a good size. You can tell that the derailleur is still under tension. If it was too long, then this chain might actually bottom out on this pulley wheel. But here on the smallest of all the cogs in the rear, I still have tension on the chain, so that should stay pretty well. In other words, it's still under spring tension. And that should keep it from slapping the chainstay like quite a bit. Okay. So now we need a way to control that rear derailleur. And what that means is I'm going to have to replace the shifter. And to do that, this has lock-on grips. In other words, they are held on with a small bolt. And I guessed the wrong size. It's a 3mm. But if you loosen that little bolt there, then you can slide the grip right off. And we'll have to remove the front shifter because, well, we're actually deleting the front shifter. This is what is called a one-by drivetrain, which means that there's only one chainring in the front, so you don't need a front shifter anymore. And as always, it's dirty. We want to give it a little wipe down. The wipe down is also your opportunity to kind of look things over, see if there was a crack in the handlebar or something like that, or some damage or corrosion. Some people like to use their bikes on trainers indoors, and they tend to sweat all over their bike, and believe it or not, that sweat can actually cause corrosion in aluminum. So it's not a bad idea to drop a protective towel over your bike if you sweat a lot during your workouts. Make sure you remove it afterwards too. Okay. So need to take off the shifters, and then we're going to remove the shifter cable and housing from the frame. Okay, it's bolted on there with a 4mm. Now we are going to be reusing our brake levers too. So we're going to retain the brake lever but remove the shifter. And this is an integrated design where the brake lever and shifter mount to the bike with the same bolt. And so I had to do something kind of provisional here, but it also seems to have been pretty effective. which we need to put our shifter mount on here. It comes, the new shifter comes with a, what they call a discrete shifter clamp and bolt. And I just want to make sure I get my orientation of the bracket the right way. Okay. And then we'll just drop that bolt in there. And we'll just get it started for now. Okay, so I've cut the cables, so we can just pull the old shifter cable out of there with the shifter. I like to bundle them up just so they don't get tangled with everything else in the parts bin. And the brake lever is going to require a bit of a shim. And what I found is that one of the belts that was previously on my bandsaw is about the right thickness. Cut a couple of pieces of that. See how that lays in there. Could be shorter. Yeah, that's about right there. So since I'll be doing the other brake lever too, I'm just going to cut another piece and that'll be ready when we do the other side. Okay, again, brake lever is kind of dirty. And it's much easier to clean while it's off of the handlebar. Take a look at it, see if there's any signs of leaking or maybe a kink in the hose. Lever bent, any kind of problem like that. We'll get our little shim on here. That might still be a little bit too long. Yeah, we'll shorten that up just a little bit. This one wants to fight me a little bit. There we go. We'll go roughly where the other one was mounted. I can see an impression on the handlebars there. What's your chain threshold again to change a 10-speed chain? I got a tool with 0.75 and 1.0 thing in, and 0.75 almost goes in. You could wait until you get to 0.75. We'll get that locked down again. If you go to 0.10, then I would say start checking out your cassette. If you ride for too long at 1.0, then you will start wearing out your cassette. And if you replace your chain at that point, you may find that it will not engage with the new cassette. Okay, there's our front shifter. Deleted, redundant. We won't be using those even on the new bike. And then, you know, I'm seeing some evidence of some potential issues here. Once I remove this off of here, I'll show you that. Again, we'll get our brake lever wiped down. Could be a different kit on this bike this year, and you know, part of this is even if they rode this bike last year, it should still feel like a new bike to them. Totally different drivetrain. Brakes have been bled, new sealant in the tires. And I'd like it to also look as new as possible. I heard 11 and 12 speed chain must be immediately replaced at 0.75. Yes, that's what I'm saying. That is where you want to replace it. If you've let it go to 1.0, then yeah, that's where you're gonna probably discover that you have to replace your cassette along with your chain. I will admit, though, that there's kind of a lot of debate on all of that. Mechanics have opinions. I usually go by what the manufacturer recommends. Meaning the manufacturer of the drivetrain. And there's a little bracket down here that kind of clamps all of the cable housing and the rear brake hose because it is routed through the inside of the frame. This has to be removed before I can pull out all of the rest of the housing. And then once I run a new housing, I can clamp it down again. So you want those to be at the ready. Again, you take stuff apart, you take the opportunity to clean it, wipe it down, what have you, and just take a look at the condition of everything. You know, make sure that the cable housings haven't rubbed a hole in the frame or, you know, something disastrous like that. And whoever, well, that zip tie just popped right off. Might have to replace that one. Usually replace chain and cassette at the same time. That is the safest practice. That is definitely your safest method. Sorry, I'm looking for a little bit of bike polish here. There we go. Said this bike was really dirty. Get a little bit of bike polish on my rag, and I can get a little bit cleaner here. Again, be able to inspect the frame. The frame is the main, you know, part of the bike. When we evaluated all the bikes earlier this year, we took a close look at the frame, because if, you know, all of your components are in good shape, but you have a crack in your frame, you don't want to ride that bike, and you certainly don't want to let kids ride the bike. And we are looking out for their safety. This is supposed to be fun, not dangerous. Okay. Parts are cleaned up. Now let's pull this housing out of here. I want to pull the ferrule off the end so I can pull this housing completely out of the frame. This one was for the front shifter. We no longer need it. And that is one of the nice things about the 1x drivetrain, is that it simplifies your shifting. So you only have to shift with one shifter. You don't have to remember what gear to be in the front and so on. And just as a matter of being thorough, we're also replacing the rear housing. And there is a sleeve there that goes on there, so I'm going to pull that out just to make sure that when we put our new housing, we put it through this foam sleeve. And what this foam sleeve is for is your housing is just running inside of the frame. So, you know, as you're riding, if that cable was that cable housing was bouncing around, it might make some noise against the inside of the frame. So they put that foam sleeve on there to just take the noise out of it. It doesn't have any effect on the function of the bike, but it probably wouldn't be very fun to ride one that was making a lot of noise. You also scored a set of bike wheels from a bicycle someone has thrown out. Ooh, that's always a nice find. Okay. So shifter right here, we need to get a housing from it down to the rear derailleur right here. Grab my length of bulk housing, and we're just going to try to give it a good estimate. Okay, so it's going to route from here down underneath the chainstay through the frame. It has to wrap around the head tube. So I'm just going to cut it off roughly right there, using a good pair of cable cutters. You may want to reshape the housing a little bit because the cable cutter can crush it a little bit. If your bike makes a lot of noise and you don't need to buy a bell, well, it might not be enough noise for that. You funny, funny guy. And I kind of don't like where I have that, but it's working for now. Okay, so I need to get it run through the frame. And for that, I just need to stick it inside of there. And we'll tilt the bike up again so I can access down here at the bottom bracket. That's tight. Okay, and now it just poked right out of the bottom bracket. So at this point, this is where I want to shove this sleeve back up inside of here. Until the housing comes out the bottom. And then I need to pull enough to get back to the rear derailleur. Right there. Okay. So now I should be able to put on a ferrule again. That fits right down there into the derailleur. We're sorting out our routing here, so I kind of like to leave it loose and unanchored until you figure this out. And then with some zip ties, they're all kind of small, but I think they'll work okay. There's a couple of anchor points here on the frame. You want to get your zip ties started. And around your housing. And you want to make sure that it fits into the groove. And then get your cable tie snugged up. Okay, you want to make sure that it has a good, gentle curve to it. I like to use flush cutters. The bottom bracket. Yeah, you do need specialty tools quite often for the bottom bracket. And just cut those off with the flush cutter, and that way it doesn't leave a little bit of the zip tie hanging out that's sharp where it can cut you. Okay, now that we know we have all of this situated correctly, you can actually put this little bracket back at the bottom bracket. And there's actually a place marked on it. There's a bunch of different little grooves in there. I want you to put it at a certain place. Okay. Get our bolt started. Hopefully. There it goes. And the other one. Get them snugged down. They are small bolts. They don't need a whole lot of torque. And they are into aluminum. And they are into the frame, so you want to make sure you don't strip those out. Oh, the wheels? Yeah, you could do that. Generally speaking, not a good idea. Yeah, like Matches is saying, if it has rim brakes, you want to make sure you're not painting the braking surface. Unless you're willing to accept that it's probably going to look really terrible. Okay, now I like to work out the length of the housing. Again, we'll release this here. Grab my cable cutters. And I want enough cable housing that if I turn the handlebars all the way to the side, that the cable housing isn't really in a bind. So that can vary a little bit, but looks like I got it within a couple of inches, just guessing. And I do try to guess long. Because you can cut it shorter, but you can't cut it longer. There's some other problems with spray painting the wheels too, like you want to make sure you're not, if you're painting at the hub, I'm having a hard time with this because, yeah, like I said, it's kind of a bad idea. And I don't have a ferrule for that. So I'll have to dig out a ferrule, I guess. Actually, yeah, I think I might be able to use one of these. Okay. So the ferrule goes on the end of the cable housing. And the cable's all coiled up here. Get that untangled. Didn't quite come apart how I was hoping it would. There we go. Okay, now your cable will slip inside of the ferrule, through the housing, travels all the way down the length of the bike to the rear derailleur. And I felt it hesitate, so it's probably having a little bit of an issue coming out right there. There it goes. Make sure I feed it through the rear derailleur correctly. Now it came out the bottom. Oops. There we go, and I can pull all the slack. I want to make sure it's seated. I want to make sure my adjuster is turned all the way in. And then out a couple clicks. There we go. All right, let's get this connected here again. And we'll finish the installation at the handlebars. So we have grips to put on here. Never, huh? Some WTB Trail 2s. It looks like they want to go on like that. So everybody has a different technique with this. I've heard of people using soap. I don't like to use soap because the soap does help the grip slide on there. But if you're ever in a downpour, that soap can get wet again. Oh, and I'm dry. Well, let me fix that here really quick. I use denatured alcohol. Because it does a couple of things at once. It will clean any residue off the handlebars. Plus it lubricates the dry lube. Well, I've heard of people using hairspray quite a bit. Lick the handle. What I found is that hairspray tends to eat some of the rubber off of the grip. Almost all grips are made of a rubber called Kraton. Whoever came up with it has made a lot of money because people all over the world are making rubber out of this, or making grips out of this Kraton rubber. But it holds up pretty good. It has a nice density. It doesn't dry out and crack. It's pretty good stuff. But when you use hairspray on it, the hairspray will hold for a while, and then you'll remove the grips and maybe reapply them again with more hairspray, and so on and so on. And eventually your grips just kind of spin on the handlebars. I think the hairspray is just a little bit too corrosive to that rubber. So a little spray of denatured alcohol on the handlebar. As I said, it should clean off any residue on there. Allows the grip to slide on there pretty easily. Put your cap in the end of the handlebar. Get your grips adjusted where you like them. It has lines on it that can kind of tell you that they're applied on there straight. There you go. And you can use the same technique for taking them off. Ah, you disassemble your work table and put it in the basement? Well, that's a shame. I use mine all the time. And I'd like to build a new one, but it's like, I don't know if I can be without a workbench long enough to build the new one, you know? But it would be nice to have a few more features. One thing that I'd really like to do is include some drawers. You're doing some major spring cleaning? Yeah, I did that yesterday. Hauled an entire truckload of stuff off. Oh, grabbed the wrong one. So now what I'm doing is just trying to get my brake levers adjusted roughly where they go. Usually right up against the grip. And that gives you a good 2-finger grip plus access to the shifter. And this should be set at about a 45-degree angle to the handlebar. And I'm just using my old carpenter's eye here and saying that that's pretty close. But I may do some final adjustment on the bike when I can drop it down to the ground and see if the levers are set up to my liking. You've been out with 5 garbage bags. Yeah, I had to do definitely a way more major cleaning than that. Not that I'm trying to compete or anything. Get that shifter tucked in there. Nice and tight to the brake lever. Yep, you can reach all of it pretty easily. And then I'll get this one adjusted. Most extreme spring cleaning challenge, yes. Well, I think Matches is going to use fire, so he may win this one. You just got to take video, okay, Matches? All I ask. Use some fire on Friday night for cooking. Okay, so new grips, new rear shifter. We've polished up the brake levers. We haven't checked the brake levers really, but they actually feel pretty good. Like these may not need a bleed. We'll just replace the brake pads in this one. Get everything nice and wiped down, looking good and brand new. All the shiny parts are shiny again. You can see your windows again. Yeah, I need to have a way to burn, Bougie. And I was planning on kind of going a little bit old school, which is I'd kind of like to build an incinerator. Now, like in California, incinerators have been illegal for a long time. You can't burn your trash. But around here, it's like you can burn stuff in a field. So, you know, why couldn't you have a fire pit? I don't know that there's an ordinance against having a fire pit or something like within the city limits unless there's a fire ban on. Ah, the work table. That's why you removed it. Gotcha. But yeah, I'd like to have like an outdoor fireplace. And I may even build it with, you know, a door to it, or at least a screen of some sort, and maybe even a spark arrestor on the top. But I'd like to be able to burn my wood scraps, you know, clean wood scraps, not just a bunch of trash, but you know, both for getting rid of wood scraps or, you know, branches in the yard or something like that. I also have to go out on the balcony and clean up. Now that you can see out the windows onto the balcony, now you got to clean that up. That's kind of funny. All right. So now that we have new housing routed all the way through the frame, the shifter is tightened up against the handlebar so I can use it. Now we can actually get into the adjustment of the derailleur. But the first thing I have to do is get it routed. And there is a particular set space for this to come through on the back side of the derailleur. And it looks like I found it. Make sure that's all nestled in the right spot. And we will loosen our binder bolt here that holds the cable just a little bit. There's a groove in the cable, or in the washer where the cable is supposed to sit. And if that's the case with your derailleur, make sure you get that right. That groove is designed to grab onto the cable, but without crushing it. If you crush the cable, then it can fray prematurely and you'll be replacing that cable. But also, where it connects to the binder bolt is also crucial, because you can actually change the geometry of the rear derailleur by anchoring it in the wrong spot. And there's actually kind of some cool tricks that you can do with that, where if you have an incompatible derailleur, like you're trying to use a 10-speed derailleur on a 9-speed drivetrain and things like that, there's little tricks that you can do by re-anchoring it to a different spot. You can make it compatible. And those are cool tricks, but I'm still of the opinion that just keep all your stuff the same and you'll be fine. In other words, yeah, use a 10-speed derailleur on with a 10-speed shifter and so on. They're just bike parts. We have a building outside we throw rubbish in. Someone has thrown out lots of furniture, so I can't get to the container. Oh, that's a bummer. Janitors are coming back tomorrow, so they will clean it up. Ooh. Well, do you even really need an excuse to build a trebuchet? Other than wanting one, you know? But hey, at least they're still cleaning things up. I hear in France they have kind of a problem with trash right now. A lot of people are protesting the government, including sanitation workers, or not sanitation workers, yeah, trash collection. And they have like piles of trash on the sides of the streets because nobody's coming to pick it up. Okay, so now our cable is connected, and I'd probably want to give it just a little bit of